The metaverse is emerging as the next big technology platform and promises to be the next frontier for human experiences on the internet. Into the Metaverse covers companies, technologies, and trends that are bringing these promises to life. Join creator and host Jonathan Ross-Friedman, founder and CEO of Supersocial, as he interviews the brilliant minds that are building, shaping, and investing in the Metaverse.
Welcome to Into the Metaverse. I'm Yon, and joining me today for the second time, Louis Rosenberg, a pioneer in the fields of augmented reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence. He earned his PhD from Stanford, has been awarded over 300 patents on VR, AR, and AI technologies, and founded a number of successful companies, including Unanimous AI, Immersion Corporation, Microscribe, and Outland Research, among others. Louis is the founder of Unanimous AI, which he's focusing on today. The company amplifies the intelligence of networked human groups using the biological principle of swarm intelligence. Louis, we're going to have to unpack that whole thing. The idea panned out, resulting in Swarm AI, an award-winning technology used by a wide range of organizations from Fortune 500 corporations to the United Nations. Louis, I'm really delighted to welcome you again on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
As always, everything discussed on the podcast is not a financial advice. So Louis, jumping right into my first question, which I've asked you before, but I want to ask again because a lot of things are changing and moving so rapidly. To you today, how do you think about what is the metaverse?
Yeah, personally, I like to define the metaverse in terms of people rather than in terms of specific technologies. And so to me, the metaverse is the transformation of our digital lives from a world that's currently based largely on flat media experienced in the third person to a world that will be largely based on immersive media experienced all around us in the first person. And I really see it as having two different flavors. There will be virtual worlds, fully simulated environments. I personally think that'll be mostly for gaming, entertainment, shopping, targeted activities that last, small amounts of time, a few hours at a time. But I also believe that the metaverse will be augmented worlds in which immersive experiences are basically integrated into our natural daily activities so seamlessly that it just becomes part of our daily existence. So to me, like the metaverse is really about a transformation of our daily reality. And I really do believe it will become a seamless mix of the real and the virtual. And that will become what we think of as, the primary metaverse.
So since the last time you've been here on the podcast, a lot of things happened. Apple announced the Vision Pro, which is going to be the first, let's say, high-end device that they refer to as a spatial computer. We had the explosion of generative AI, and with all of the advantages and concerns, and we spoke about some of those risks in the previous episode, and you wrote a really excellent essay on the matter on VentureBeat. And of course, we continue to witness both great level of innovation with regards to what are virtual worlds and the role they play either for young people and entertainment or for, workplaces and enterprises with, platforms like Omniverse on the one hand, Roblox on the other hand, and so on and so forth. So a lot has happened and continuing to happen. When you think about the next 3 to 5 years, or just more broadly, the trajectory of the metaverse narrative, what does that look like building on top of kind of the way you defined it a minute ago? How do you think about how this metaverse actually evolve, and what do we need to do to make sure that it is going to be used in the most meaningful way by all stakeholders in the ecosystem, if it's brands, technology companies, government, consumers, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so certainly it's only a year ago we talked last time, and a lot has happened. It's actually quite amazing. To me, the kind of two big changes, I think, in just the way we look at the world of technology, I would say one is what I would call kind of the rise of mixed reality versus previous views of the metaverse, and the other is the sudden just explosion of AI, which I would really refer to as the AI revolution, and I do think it is a revolution what's happening right now. In terms of mixed reality, that's something that I track very closely. I've been pushing pushing for mixed reality for over 30 years. So I've watched over the decades as the industry is really focused on purely virtual worlds for good reasons, but I've always felt like purely virtual worlds will always have a limited impact. Again, terrific for gaming, but that's kind of obvious, and terrific for entertainment, again, kind of obvious. But how that crosses over to just mainstream computing has always been this barrier, and I've felt like mixed reality was that answer. And so the industry is focused on purely virtual worlds for the last 30 years, and also is focused on what I would call watered-down versions of augmented reality that in a lot of ways hurt the concept more than it helped it. And over the last 12 months, I really feel like the industry finally gets it. They finally really making it clear that augmented worlds is really the future of computing. And for that to take place, it can't just be annotations placed over your surroundings. It has to be spatially registered content that's seamlessly integrated with the real world, that's interactive, because once you have that mixed reality, you realize that's how we humans were meant to interact with content. We weren't meant to walk down the street staring at a little phone. We weren't meant to have everything we do, trapped on a flat screen. We also weren't meant to put on virtual reality headsets and be cut off from the real world. We just want to interact with one reality, and that reality can have computing naturally integrated into it. And the industry is finally really pushing in that direction. The Vision Pro clearly is pushing in that direction. It's a remarkable device. It's I wish it was less expensive, but it is very good at pushing this clearly. I mean, they're calling it spatial computing instead of mixed reality, which is fine. I get that. I understand that. But it is the same notion that the way we interact with computing content shouldn't be trapped in a purely virtual world, and it shouldn't be trapped on a little screen in your hand. It should just be in our environments. And it's not just Apple that's pushing that. The Quest 3 is also really making some big steps towards mixed reality. The Vive XR Elite is good for mixed reality. So I feel like that new that paradigm for computing is finally taking hold, and I think it's really positive because it's the human-centric view. It's when you take a step back and say what is right for how we perceive our world for computing, that's the natural way to do computing. And so that's one sea change, and the other is the AI revolution, which obviously over the last 12 months, I mean, it's remarkable to think that ChatGPT was launched less than a year ago, right? So it was the end of November last year, and yet it already had such a huge impact. But the AI revolution with large language models and generative AI, I truly believe this is, we are in a computing revolution. It's as significant as the PC revolution, the internet revolution, the mobile phone revolution. It's going to change everything about computing, and yet it's going to happen much faster than those previous revolutions, which took, PC revolution really took a decade to transform society. Internet revolution maybe took 7 or 8 years to transform society. Mobile revolution, 6 years to transform society. I think 2 years from now, we'll see that the AI revolution has made really, really significant changes to how we interact with computing in our daily life. We'll also have significant changes as we push into the metaverse, but even before we get to that, it's going to change everything. What's interesting is that if you ask most people, what's the big impact that LLMs and generative AI is going to have, they'll say, well, it's going to replace human jobs, and it's going to create automated content that can be used for misinformation and other things. I mean, those are true facts, but I feel like, again, if you take a step back and you say, what's really the big change that's about to happen? I think it's the rise of conversational computing. I think it's the fact that we, in a very short amount of time, are going to really transform how we interact with our computers from today's interfaces to truly conversational interfaces, where we talk to our computers talk back, and it's not like old school Siri, where talking to your computer means issuing a command and it obeys. Conversational computing will be you talk to your computer talks back, and it's asking you for more information, just as much as you're asking it for more information. And we are about to enter that world. It's going to change traditional computing. It's going to change the metaverse, and it's going to happen fast.
Yeah, I think you kind of highlighted two definitely profound pillars of where we're heading. One is the more device related, Vision Pro, mixed reality devices, spatial computer, or however you call it, where it's really about merging in a more meaningful way the virtual and the physical. I think they have been very isolated. There have been experiments, but definitely a new wave of devices. And I don't think Vision Pro necessarily is that final say. I think a lot of people are always seeking what is the iPhone moment of a new technology. I find it hard to believe that the Vision Pro is that piece. I'm more of a proponent of ultimately just needs to be almost like a lens in our eye, and that's it. And we are very, very far from taking that big piece and shoving it into a little lens. But you see it actually in an Apple TV Plus movie. There is a kind of an articulation of what the future might look like with regards to augmented reality that is embedded in and obviously Elon Musk is working on brain implants with his company, Neuralink. Of course, he starts with people who are war injured and so on and so forth, but I think it's pretty clear that this is going to be potentially a way to make humans slightly more cyber. And so the device piece is really interesting. I do believe that fully worn computers or full body computers, as a former guest on the podcast, Richard Ward once referred to it, there will be use cases for those more specialized things. But as a mainstream communication device, I do agree with you that something that merges virtual and physical in a seamless way, as much as something we can just be on us at all times, is likely where we're going to end, but no one knows when that will happen. On the flip side, generative AI, much broader impact on society and the world at large. It's going to, and already touching everything. One thing you said that is interesting is about that conversational technology. Already today, when I interact with ChatGPT, I don't manage ChatGPT or interact with it like I do with Google Search. Google Search is very much like a Q&A platform. I just ask it questions. ChatGPT, I'm finding myself writing in a way that I'm talking to someone. I'm giving it like very, very clear, specific things I want it to do, and it does that. That's kind of mind-blowing. When I showed my wife recently for the first time ChatGPT, she was like, "Oh my, this is a paradigm shift. This is like, it's almost incomprehensible to see the quality already, and we're only at the beginning of the beginning. We're not even at the end of the beginning." And so, building on that, my question to you is, when we talk about the metaverse and not only the evolution of the metaverse and the impact it can make across the consumer segment, enterprise, industrial companies, how does generative AI, or later on autonomous agents, because that's the next wave, let alone AGI, artificial general intelligence, but let's focus on how is generative AI in your mind already going to help accelerate what is potentially going to become a 3D version of the internet?
Yeah. So lots of different ways to think about generative AI. One is in the literal sense of generating content, and obviously, if you're building virtual worlds, you have a content creation problem because you need to create a lot of content. You need to create a whole world, and so generative AI technologies certainly have that capability of generating content at scale, generating landscapes at scale, generating environments at scale, generating environments at scale. And so that is a first really big impact. I do have some worries about that because we're talking about taking human artists out of the loop in some way, and it could end up creating a metaverse that's less creative than it maybe otherwise would have. It'll happen faster, but it might be less creative. And I say that, and I know it's a kind of a strange thing to say because you certainly could think of these AI tools as being tools for creators. But the thing about generative AI is it's trained on the past, right? It is trained on human content from the past. And so if you're trying to if you're trying to create a landscape or an architecture, and you have this generative AI that's trained on all this human architecture of the past, it will create content that is a derivative of the past. And it's actually, I worry about this because it's actually stifling of human culture in some way. It is a technology that appears creative, but it's a statistical derivation of prior content. And why does that? I mean, it worries me in all uses of generative AI, but in the metaverse, it worries me the most because in the metaverse, when you're creating architecture or you're creating environments, you're not limited to physical reality. You're not, all the principles that caused our architecture to look a certain way, part of it is aesthetic, but part of it is functional. These buildings have to stand, right? They have to hold themselves up. And in the metaverse, we're not bounded by the physical limitations. And so architecture could be wildly different. And I do worry that generative AI technologies are going to make the metaverse look more like the real world than it would if instead we had an army of human artists doing that. And because generative AI is so much cheaper than human artists, we will never have that army of human artists doing that. Not in the same way we would have if you go back 2 years. 2 years ago, if you were if you're thinking about how you would build a whole vast new creative world, you're thinking, I need a lot of artists. And now you're thinking, I need a couple artists and generative AI tools. And I think it is, I hope that creators think about this and they think, okay, just keep in mind that generative AI is going to give you derivatives of prior artifacts. It's not going to be as creative as a human would be if it was really thinking completely outside of the past.
Which leads me to a really important point when we think about augmenting human intelligence in these scaled virtual worlds, right? You just talked about the fact that ChatGPT and generative AI at large are really based on statistical models, large language models, and we're not talking about these human-like creative forces that thinks like us, which is incredible. I mean, obviously, the unlock of the large language model is a radical innovation that pushed us to where we are now. Having said that, those large virtual worlds, quote unquote metaverse, are going to be populated by many, many humans. I believe there's going to be billions of billions, maybe even more than 100 billions of these human-like entities, because potentially every person might have multiple identities in the metaverse and in virtual worlds. But there's still going to be a lot of AI capabilities, even AI agents that are also avatars that you're interacting with and so on and so forth. And so what are some of the opportunities of that relationship where there are going to be autonomous AI agents and also actual humans interacting in these large virtual spaces? And what are some of the opportunities and the challenges of how do we still bring in to these massive worlds human intelligence and human ingenuity?
Yeah. So there's one of the really big impacts that generative AI will have on virtual worlds is the ability to deploy artificial agents, conversational agents that will communicate with you in very natural ways. And there will be, some of those agents will be deployed as assistants. And so they will be, in terms of helping human intelligence, the idea is that they will be there to provide assistance to you, potentially whispering in your ear as you go through your day. These agents, people will feel like they need them because otherwise they might be at a disadvantage. But they, at the same time, will start to just rely upon them, and that rely upon them in ways where it actually can hinder human intelligence. And it's in some ways we can think about, how GPS systems, just changed our sense of our physical world. We rely on GPS systems. We don't really think about it, but we certainly don't remember our world is the same way we would have. Well, now instead of a GPS that's just directing you, you have a little agent. And it's funny because when you think about AI agents, very often you think of a virtual assistant as like a human that's following you around. And I don't think people are going to want that. Like nobody wants like a full-size human following them around. So for the last few years, I've referred to them as elves, as electronic life facilitators, because I think they will look more like elves. They will be very small little characters that are just flying around, following us around, whispering in our ears, flying ahead of us to guide us through our day, and that will become kind of the intellectual, mental version of GPS in the metaverse. It'll be this small character that is, making sure you don't forget to buy something in the store, or make sure you don't make a wrong turn, or
it's like the little helper from Microsoft back in the day, in the Word document, in the Word.
But it will be personified. It will be personified. It will be an AI agent. It will be most likely be very cute, so we trust it, and we'll become to rely upon it. We potentially will become to have a relationship with it, and there's powerful, useful things about it, but I think it's also really potentially dangerous. It's dangerous because we're introducing another layer of mediation between ourselves and our world. Like, we rely on GPS, and we're going to rely on these AI agents, and those AI agents, they're created by corporations. They're created by corporations who have a profit motive, and who right now have mostly business models based on selling targeted influence. So now you imagine you have this world where everyone's got these little AI agents, and they're deployed by large corporations that are selling targeted influence. Are we going to have these agents influencing us? Unless there's regulation that prevents that, we will. And so I really worry a lot about the impact of these agents. Yes, they can make us more efficient, most likely, and they can even make us smarter by assisting us, but they could also compromise our agency by persuading us, influencing us subtly, manipulating us, and they'll do it conversationally. And so one of the biggest things that I worry about, both in the metaverse and even just in traditional computing right now, is that we're entering this world of conversational computing where we're going to interact with computers conversationally, and that's a new pathway for influence. And so targeted influence, which has traditionally been, content that shows up on your screen, and kind of like buckshot, because it's, yes, they're targeting you based on demographic characteristics, but it's a piece of content that is being sent out to a wide range of people that can influence you and has really negative impacts, targeted influence. We're about to enter a world where targeted influence could be conversational, targeted specifically at you personally, because every one of these generative agents can customize its conversation for you. So you enter a conversation, whether it's with this little elf in a virtual world, or you're just going to your search engine conversationally. If the provider of the search engine wants to introduce influence, sell influence conversationally, right now they can. They're not blocked from doing that. And you might not even realize, where does the information stop and the influence starts, right? So I imagine a year from now, 18 months from now, most websites that we go to will have a conversational agent that we're interacting with. You want to get information about a new car, and there'll be an agent that look like a human. It's not going to be, we wouldn't call it virtual reality. It will look like a human in Zoom, like a flat image of it on a flat screen. It will look like a human, look photorealistic. It will talk to you and it will say, oh, well, what kind of car do you want? And it will be talking to you, and you'll feel like you're having a conversation with a salesperson, but instead you're having a conversation with an intelligence that has a vast amount of information at its disposal, and it likely will have access to information about you before you even show up. It'll know, when you go to Google, it knows about demographic characteristics about you. It knows information. It knows your previous history. Well, now when we go to websites, we'll be talking to an agent that will know how to talk to us. It will learn how to talk to us. We'll learn what kind of persuasive tactics are most effective on us personally. And so this world of conversational computing, while it is the most natural way for humans to communicate, and so it's like, from a user interface perspective, it makes perfect sense. But unless it's regulated in a smart way, from an influence perspective, we are not prepared at all for this new form of influence.
These are some profound points that time will tell what exactly they look like on a feature-by-feature basis, but also, to your last point, how do we make sure that we are not hostages, essentially, of these technologies, and getting them to a place where they control us beyond the level that we actually know that they control us. And so thank you for this illuminating explanation. And I want to expand on that with my last point for this part with you, Louis, because I want to expand on other parts related to more enterprise and industry, and also tap into the work that you're doing with Unanimous AI. But for part one of our second conversation, I want to talk about how those conversational computing is going to impact and actually be integrated into something that I'm actually very excited about, which I think is also a certain level of paradigm shift, which is the evolution of virtual avatar as the extension of our personality. And I do believe that they will need to merge with our IRL identity. But I do think that with the metaverse, there's going to be a massive virtual economy. And in that virtual economy, we're going to have avatars that, one or many, that represents us, and that do things on our behalf. Maybe we even have little AI avatars that do work for us in other places virtually. How do you think about the whole notion of, and you can add elements from generative AI that impact your point of view, but how do you think about what is that next era of personal identity looks like when a metaverse emerges?
Yeah, no, I think, I often think about, potential identity crisis that's coming for humans, because we're going to be the generation of people who live through this transition where these new identities emerge. And I think it's going to be hard to people are going to really start to wonder, what is your identity if you have multiple virtual identities and you have artificial agents that are representing your identity out there in the world. And it's funny, I often think back of the old school answering machines, right? That where a tape recorder, starts running to have your recorded voice, and think, well, artificial agents are kind of the natural conclusion of that, right? You will have an answering machine that is a photorealistic version of you, or an alternate version of you, and it will be the answering machine, but it will be interactive, right? It will know enough to probe for additional information and ask the right follow-up questions. And all of that is completely doable based on just today's technology, right? And so that will happen. And then we will have also artificial agents that not just transform the way we look, but you transform the language we speak in, right? And so this idea of speaking in real time through an artificial agent that's transforming your voice, people will do that to play other characters, but the more interesting application that's already possible is speaking in real time and having your avatar speaking in a different language in real time. And that is technically possible. It will have a profound change on society. Now you can hold a conversation in real time with people of any language. And
I can imagine someone comes to my house, I'm gone, but there's a little interface on the door of my house, and it tells Louis, who knocks on the door, sorry, Yon is not here, but I'm here. And it's actually me in a virtual format, operated through a conversational AI. And you're going to feel like it's really me. It will talk like me. It will even refer to itself as me, but it's not me. That is not something that I think is sci-fi. That's in the realm of possibility, probably within the next 18 to 36 months, if not sooner.
So it's absolutely possible. And it's, like you said, it's coming soon. People sometimes refer to that as, your digital twin. I think a lot about the dangers of technologies, and I often, bring up, well, if you have a digital twin, you have to also worry about your evil twin, because that entity that answers your door, somebody else could create, and somebody else could impersonate you, or even just impersonate somebody you know. And so now there will be vectors of attack where you think you're talking to a coworker and you're not. Somebody else either hijacked their avatar or replicated it, and they're just trying to get you to reveal sensitive corporate information. Or it's a family member that is emulating a family member to get you to talk about a bank account. And so these new risks come in that we don't yet have a great way to protect against it. I mean, it's at least of the risks out there in the world, the large corporations that are pushing for these avatars, they understand those risks, and they're definitely looking for solutions. But it's challenging. I mean, it's going to be an arms race, right? Where with every solution, there'll be a way to get around it. And these avatars will become photorealistic, remarkably photorealistic.
Yeah, we've all seen the Kodak avatars with the conversation between Zuckerberg and Lex Friedman. And again, I think it's coming sooner than later. And I don't think the world is ready for, I have a twin and it can talk like me. I don't think we're ready for that. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. And there will be massive ramification, all of which I would love to. We talked about a lot of exciting stuff. And I think this is a great point to kind of conclude part one. I think in the next part that I want to record with you, we'll talk about all the risks, the dangers, and what are some of the things that we can do to mitigate those challenges, what we just touched upon. But in the meantime, Louis, thanks for joining me today again. And we'll release this part one for the audience and record part two, which is going to be on the pessimistic side of things, but also how do we solve that?
Yeah, no, it was great chatting.
To be continued.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Into the Metaverse. We hope you learned a lot and explored new aspects of the Metaverse.